My name's Kyle Cease. I was a stand-up comedian, actor, author. I started doing stand-up really young. Like, I think I was around 12 when I did my first open mic, and then when I was 20 through 30, I was booking different movies, got to do Comedy Central and tour as a comedian. And one of the things that started coming to light was the constant feeling of when something happens, I'll be happy. I would just always think when I get the next gig or when I get the next movie or when I book this part or when I get to date this person, I'll be happy. And I think one of my first awakenings was the revelation that I was always thinking that and seeing other people thinking that. A lot of other people were very successful in their head thinking, when do I book the next movie? When do I get the next thing? And I know that a lot of listeners watching this right now have in their head right now something that when they go, when that happens, I'll be happy. When I get that job, when I let go of this relationship, when I get over this addiction, I'll be happy. And I started realizing that as I was getting these things, they were the source of my happiness. So I was actually in fear. I'd be like, well, what if I lose this? And I better get the next thing and I better keep going. And it just started this constant chasing. And a huge shift in my life was when I left the thinking of when something happens, I'll be happy, and moved towards a new belief, which is when I'm happy, things will happen. And by happy, I mean okay with all of myself. I mean, not just big fake smile, but okay with myself as is, okay with my pain, okay with my shame, okay with my darkness, okay with my anger, okay with myself. And I've been in an ongoing practice of being okay with both myself, the world, and just becoming more and more present and accepting of myself. And ironically, as I'm not chasing certain things, more amazing things just come to me. And I started realizing that if I'm chasing something, I'm actually saying it completes me. And if I'm instead connected to myself and more okay with myself, other things that I wasn't even anticipating and could be even more of an amazing surprise can come to me. And so this started to be what I teach people. I started showing people that your belief is, if you get this thing, you'll be happy. And how many times do we need to keep getting the thing before we realize that's not where our happiness is? So I stopped chasing and started being. I started listening. And this is where life actually told me, you're done being a stand-up comic, and I have more exciting things for you that you would never have thought of. And so for the last 10 years, I've been combining comedy and transformation, kind of living in the moment, following my own guidance of what it has for me. And I realized that there is a space that has something bigger for me than anything that my ego could have come up with. And so that's what I do. I listen to the now and then do what it says. But the scariest thing on the planet for most people is sitting alone with yourself. I mean, you're just sitting alone and people are freaking out. We'd rather kill other people than sit with ourselves. Now, I know that that's been normalized in our world, but we should look at the fact that being alone with ourselves is horrifying. And ask ourselves, do you think that's what nature wanted? Do you think nature and God and the universe were like, I want people to be horrified of themselves. I want people to be so scared to just relax. I want them to be so scared to see what's inside. Of course not. Of course, nothing outside had that intention. But what's amazing about this time is many people are now forced to face their biggest fear. And as I sit here and create silence, I want to offer anyone watching to notice how scary that is. And then instead of just catering to that's scary and moving on, go, why is that scary? And ask yourself what would happen if you just keep listening to it. Ask yourself what would happen would it be scary if you listened to it for a couple hours? And when we were kids, we were given these parents. These parents have their own egos and their own patterns and their own life. And we learned our job is to do what we need to do to stay connected to these parents. We need to make sure we're loved, we need to make sure we're fed, we need to do whatever we need to do so that these two parents don't hurt us, don't abandon us, don't leave, right? And an analogy I've used before is, imagine if you went to another planet and there were two aliens there that were going to take care of you for 20 years. And let's imagine that one alien comes home drunk. He's just screaming, and you start to realize, I better be quiet or this alien will hurt me. So you start to become this quiet person because you're scared that that alien will hit you or abandon you. And then imagine that there's another alien that like loves it when you, whatever, sing or tap dance or something like that. And that alien only gives you love when you perform. And she's got her alien friends and she's like, watch this. And you're just sitting there tap dancing. And so for 20 years, you start to learn my job is to dance over here. And then I get love from this alien, and that's how I get fed, and that's how I survive. And then my other job is to stay silent when this alien comes home. And for 20 years, you learn to do that. And then, let's say, finally, it's time to leave that part of that planet and go out to the rest of the planet and meet the other aliens. And you're on a date with a new alien, and you're tap dancing and shit, and you're silent, and that alien's like, I don't even like, why aren't you talking? And you're just sitting here quiet, and you're like doing all this shit, and none of that's you, right? None of that's you. So here you are becoming this false thing. And when I work with people now, I've noticed that I'm working with what they became to not get hurt by the aliens. And they just become a collection of patterns. And this time is the realizing of these patterns. The false you is dying. Those patterns that you used to protect you don't work anymore. And so what's happening right now is all of those things are coming to light. See, those patterns, you got to realize, were in you before this happened, but you never had to look at them because you had enough external addictions to distract you from them, right? But as right now happens, all these things are coming to light, and our job is just to be with them, to just sit there, to listen. And then you start to become the space for the pattern versus the pattern itself. You break off of the pattern. Here's this pattern that's showing up, and it's like trying to be quiet, and you're like looking at it, why am I being quiet? Like, what am I doing? So that's what's happening right now. All of our patterns are just breaking off. The achievement, the I'm going to make something happen, the I'm going to make so much money, the I gotta get the right relationship. As time moves on, more and more, we are losing our ability to find anything outside of us that's going to make us happy. And the more we do this work, the more we go inward, the more we meditate, the more we listen, the more we are stuck in this time that is just changing everything about how we saw the world. And when I work with a lot of people, I hear them say, what do I do? What do I do? And the underlying belief there is, I better do it the right way because I don't want to get hurt. And when you go, well, what do you mean you won't get hurt? It's a childhood fear. Like, I better keep everything together or my parents will divorce again. I better do this the right way or I won't be worthy. I won't be loved. And right now, what's happening is a gigantic purging of everything that you had to escape the now. Every goal that you set as a person won't matter. That's why a lot of times people have like long-term goals and they're like, actually, I don't care. Have you ever had that where you're like, we're gonna do this and we'll build $1 million, and you're like 2 days in, you're like, actually, I don't care. Because as you connect to the now, you start to realize it has something for you. It has more for you than any egoic thing that you can put together. Any goal, any mission, any answer outside of you isn't doing it anymore. Think about this, like anytime you go, I'll do this, you have to bring your past in to see what you want to do in the future. So you need the past to create a vision of the future, right? The biggest thing you can picture still involves a you from the past. But if you listen to the now more, you lose the ability to see that you have any story in the past, and you just start to be now. And you lose the mental need for an answer. And if you constantly need an answer, realize that that means you constantly have a secret question. You're in fear. Our answers in the future are the response to our secret fear. What am I going to do so they won't hit me? What am I going to do so I won't be judged? What am I going to do so I don't go broke? What am I going to do so that I'm loved? We're constantly searching for something to save us from something that we don't realize we're so scared of inside. And what I believe is 2020 and 2021 and beyond are the removing of that. You can't just escape with a doing anymore. You have to be here. And what if right now our patterns are being so screwed with that we have to go inward, and all of our darkness, we're being forced to forgive our parents for abandoning us. We're being forced to forgive our shame, because the now just is forgiveness. This moment just is forgiveness, right? It's just love. It loves everything. This space is so loving. It can hold space for the ultimate darkness, right? You can have a war in this space. It literally contains all that is, and it loves everything there is. And the more that we listen to it, the more you can't move forward until you forgive this. And so you get these choices of like resisting your past story and keeping it there, or listening to the now, and it purges that story. Now things can come to you. You still live, you still go for a walk, you still do stuff, but you also can receive much higher level ideas. A worthiness that shows up, a you that's totally not needing to do something to fix something or complete something. You're just worthiness. So it's normal that would come into your life, because your connection to yourself is bigger than that thing. Imagine if an actor plays a character and they think they are the character. Like, imagine if Gene Wilder thought he was Willy Wonka and he's just moving as Willy Wonka, and then one day he has this glimpse of, holy shit, I'm Gene Wilder, I'm not Willy Wonka. I've been stuck in this chocolate factory, half murdering kids all day, doing everything I could to make sure that, right? Like my job was to stay within the protected realm of Willy Wonka, get a kid on the elevator and go up after I almost killed him in a van. That's my job. And then he steps back for a minute and goes, oh, I'm the actor playing Willy Wonka. But if you've been playing Willy Wonka since you formed your memory, you'd be sure that that's who you are. But as time goes on, you have a moment where you're like, oh, I'm the actor playing the character. Now all of a sudden, all of that Willy Wonka story isn't true. So it has to start to fall out of you, but you might have achieved a lot of false ideas of love through that character. So you're going to do everything you can to keep it. Do you get what I'm saying? No, I got to keep the Willy Wonka, but I know that it's not the truth now. I got to keep the character, but I know that it's not the truth. So when I hang out with my friends, I feel like the Willy Wonka, but also it's breaking off of me because it's just a character and I'm actually the actor playing it, right? So as you do this work, you start to have your awareness expand to a place that realizes you're not that character. And as you keep going, you find other characters you've been playing. The character of the worrier, the character of constant repression and shame, the character of anger, the character of your gender, the character of your ethnicity or your skin color or the country you're from. These are all characters you've played, and you start to realize, I'm the actor playing that. Holy crap, I'm the actor playing that lost pattern. I'm the actor playing the guy that realized that yesterday. And you start to find a new actor, and then you shed that character, and we can let go of Willy Wonka. It turns out you're the actor, Gene Wilder, that played him. And the more you do this, the more your awareness expands to, I'm just love. And the fear is, well, if I'm just love, then nothing will get done. No. You've never seen what happens when you're just love. Trust me, it's way bigger. It requires a lot less preparing and getting it right because you're not in fear of getting it wrong, so it just comes through right. And it stops being you egoically doing things, and it starts to be the universe doing it all through you. It starts to be the now doing it all through you. The real you is trying to do amazing things through you, and it can't do it as easily through the character. So as you shed the character, the universe is going to do amazing things through you, and it not only will do it through your body, but it will change the outside through your body too. And you start to watch as reality changes along with your awareness. So it's not just you change, everything changes. Because if you go, oh, Gene Wilder was Willy Wonka, and then you start to realize this isn't a real chocolate factory, it's a set. This is a movie set. Those aren't real kids, they're actors in the game of my life. Then you start to realize everything is changing around you and you start to leave the set. Life doesn't keep being do what you can within the set. Life is get off the set and see that it's a set. This whole thing is a set. And as you move into the now, it's going to reveal more to you when you're ready for it. So when we understand everything is vibrating in total harmony, you realize the only challenge we have to that is the belief that we're the smaller character. We right now have made video games becoming more and more realistic. And the games that we're choosing to play are all simulations of murders primarily. It's like, I want to be in something realistic, and I want to be in a shootout, and I want to be in a war zone, and I want to run around with a machine gun and shoot everything. That's the video games humans want to play. Now, why are we wanting to experience more of this? Well, because the only way we can feel in our mind is that we want to experience a simulation that brings up our feelings and our darkness and our pain. Why are we watching horror movies at all? Why are we doing this? Now, if you could play a video game that was so realistic that you couldn't tell if you were playing a video game, and the beginning of the video game wipes out your memory and takes your ability away to even realize you're playing a video game, I guarantee you, a lot of people would still play the game. And so that's what we're doing. Consciousness wants to experience itself, and it can't experience itself through the clouds of the all that isness. It needs to experience the illusion of separateness. It needs to create the movie, create the video game, create an opponent. It needs to create a seeming opponent so that you'll move up the game. When you play a football game or you play a board game, you have to have an opponent. You can't play. You literally create, with a friend, the illusion of they're your opponent so that you can learn to get better at something. So everything in your life right now has an opponent so you can learn to love on a higher level. Otherwise, we'd just be stuck with our traumas and never overcome them. And you get to play the video game of lockdown. You get to play the video game of bad relationships, so that you can learn to forgive, so that you can learn to be the all that isness, so that you see that every way that I've tried to maneuver around this problem that isn't love isn't working, right? You notice that? Every way you have to avoid a problem, it keeps coming up. No matter how many ways you've tried to avoid your money issue, you still have that core money issue because you haven't learned to love that thing. Every way that you've avoided, your loneliness, but not faced your loneliness, it keeps coming up. Oh, I have a fear of loneliness, so I'm gonna marry this person. Weirdly, I still feel lonely. That it's not on the external. But I need to bring that in so you can learn that's not the answer. And I need to bring this in so you can learn that's not the answer. And you keep changing your approach until finally you surrender. But you got to experience the game of this illusion of these problems so that you could see the illusion of you. You needed the illusion of the problem to see the illusion of your character, because only your character has a problem with these problems. The real you just sees them as they are, and they're not issues. When we say, I make this much money, I have all these problems, I whatever, we think that's me. But if you say that, if you put an I to the thing, then you're going to be scared to lose that thing because that would be death to you, even your problems. I'm someone who worries all the time. Well, now if I get you to stop worrying, that's death to you. So you're going to fight for worrying. So we got to undo the I from any attachment, even giant accomplishments. And so every second there's a higher you calling to you. It's that feeling that'll say something like, what if we leave this company? That feeling is a calling. You don't know why it's coming in. And when it shows up, it's like this opportunity. It's like a portal opened. It's like, let go of this, or tell them no, or don't go to dinner, or even seeming small things like choose salad tonight over pasta, whatever, like little callings that show up. I notice that when they show up, it's like a portal to a truer version of you. And whenever it shows up, there's always a yeah, but fear that comes in too. That's the ego, that's the old story, right? That's the small story, that's the protection. So whenever you have a new thing that says, what if we leave this company? There'll be a reason that you shouldn't. Well, we've been here for 20 years and we're gonna get a promotion soon. And this calling's telling you, I want you to learn to follow a feeling and not mental evidence. And what happens is when you follow the yes, the fear goes away. When you follow the fear, the opportunity goes away. So we live our life either following a highest calling and going into this kind of unknown and then acclimating to that new unknown. And then it purges out the egoic story that wanted to stay in the smaller thing. Or we keep following the why we can't limitation story, and the opportunities stop calling to us because we keep going, I can't because, yeah, but it's not easy. Yeah, I can't go do that because I have kids. I can't follow this because blah, 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 blah. And then we get more and more ingrained in the small self. And what I believe is the more we stay in our limitation, the more the world has to mirror to us that we're doing that. And a great way it could be doing that is if you go, I want to leave this relationship, but I'm going to stay in it anyway. You're putting yourself into lockdown. You're literally putting yourself in your own prison. When you hear a calling that says, leave this job, and you ignore it and say, yeah, but I have to, you're saying, I'm going to imprison myself for money. I'm going to imprison myself to make everyone else happy. I can't go follow my heart. I got to make everyone else happy. And so what does life have to do? It has to show you that you're putting yourself in a prison. I'm going to show you the mirror of you locking yourself down, of you ignoring the highest you. You're ignoring this calling. I tell you all the time, follow this, and you've just practiced ignoring this, and you keep listening to the why you can't, why it's not that easy, why blah, 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 blah. So you're screaming and fighting for your limitations. You're fighting for your prison. You're fighting for your fear. You're fighting for your lack. What I've learned is the reason you think you can't is the reason you have to. For instance, I want to go follow my heart, but I have kids. What a great reason to follow your heart and show them that they can do the same thing. Otherwise, your kids learn, don't follow your heart. And then we tell the kids, always follow your heart, while we don't do it. So the kids just learn, okay, feel guilty and think that I should be following my heart while I don't do it. Because kids don't follow what you say, they follow what you do, right? So you're like, oh, I want to quit my job and go write my book, but I don't have any money. Right, because you're not writing the damn book. Like, go write the book and see what you truly are and move to a frequency that's higher than your reason why you think you can't. And whatever reason you think you need to keep, like for instance, when you make my obligation to money bigger than your calling, what I've discovered is you lose both of them. When you make something bigger than your heart, you have to lose both of them. It's like the universe has to take the thing that you're holding on to away from you so that you can see that you're still alive without it, to get you to finally face that fear so that you can move not enslaved to that fear. And so the more we follow that portal, the more we follow that calling, the more it moves you into the now. The portal is actually, in my eyes, a higher you calling to the lower you. So when you move into it, it purges the yeah but, right? It says goodbye to the you that keeps you in your prison. And you're following your freedom and you're following this thing, and that freedom takes you more and more into the now. The ego is just a mental escape from the now, while actually you're not even escaping it. The ego is an escape. It's over there. That's the ego. It's over here. The answer's over here. But there is no over here. You're just here doing this. Right? Over here's the answer. Right? Over here is better than this. But there is no over here. There's no future. There's just now. There's no past. There's just now. So the more you follow the calling, the more you follow the higher you. And the more you do that, the more you start to realize the only I is now. And then the sky's the limit of what could happen. In fact, the sky's the limit is actually a very limiting phrase, because the sky exists within you too. There's so many phrases I've realized that the opposite's way worse. Like when people say, he went off the deep end. Well, you're sitting in the shallow. You're in the shallow end. Oh, if this person went in over their head. Right, I'm using all of my body to think, and you're staying in your head. My favorite phrase that's a limiting phrase is, they're getting too big for their britches. Have you ever heard that? Meaning they're getting too big for, which really stems from they're getting too big from their pants. But I have a 4-year-old daughter, and the way it works is she outgrows her pants. You throw out the britches. You don't try to shove her back into her britches. And let's stop calling them britches. Can we at least move it up to pants? But my point is that we're supposed to get too big for our old self. The only people that say to you, you're too big for your britches, are saying you're too big for me. They're the britches. And our goal is to get too big for anything, too big for any of those limitations. One of the phrases I hear a lot of people say is, I got to wrap my mind around that. And I say, don't try to shove the vastness of what's going on in the universe into the smallness of your mind, which is just your egoic understanding. Instead, surrender your mind to the infinite vastness of the now. Because this stuff that's here is way too hard for the egoic mind to ever understand. So fall in love with the I don't know and just keep going. This has to be the most important thing, my connection to the now. Otherwise, I'm bringing an egoic, fear-based false me into the other things. So me as a father, my daughter is, of course, so important, the most important thing ever, and I have to bring, she's the reason why I have to bring the ultimate version of myself to the world, the now version of myself. It's bigger than the goal-setting, ambitious achiever self. The now me right here is so much more profound. And as I listen to the now, sometimes I hear my ego come up and it goes, oh, I can't do this, or I don't understand what's happening, or I don't understand why I'm doing this. And I'll see the ego like show up. But if I don't cater to it, but I hear it, meaning like I hear the voice screaming, I can't do this, and I just keep listening, then eventually that voice starts to feel held and gets quieter. And I start to realize I'm not that voice. And how much every single fear that we have, every limitation, every doubt, everything is a lie. It's a pattern. And whenever I feel scared, I know that a pattern is coming up. So as I keep listening to the now, I notice that a pattern might say, I can't do this. That's a childhood version of me. That's a story from my past. It's scared that it won't be seen, that it won't be loved. And if you sit and listen long enough, it dissolves. So if someone was to say, how do you do that? The first thing I say is just be with what you feel. Don't ever bring up the reason for why you feel it. Let me give you an example. If I say, hey, this guy over here is sad, we're gonna be here with his emotions. But if I said, this guy is really sad because someone cut him off at work the other day, we're gonna be mad at the person that cut him off and avoid this guy, right? So if I bring up the reason, then all of a sudden we're escaping what we're sad about. But the thing that we think we're sad about or mad about is not the actual reason. It's just triggering something from before that. Right? If I say to someone, hey, you're a purple monster, they'll just be like, you're wrong, and it doesn't trigger me. But if I say, you're just like your dad, they go, what the hell? The reason is because they are trying really hard not to be like their dad. So whatever their giant fear is, what we got to do is we sit comfortably, we take a deep breath in, and we listen. If my 4-year-old daughter came into the room and said, I'm scared no one will like me, wouldn't it be weird if I was like, well, let's get makeup on you and have you tap dance in front of the neighbors and see if they like you? Like, that's not the answer. It's, I hear that you feel that way, and I'm gonna just love you even if you feel that way. So if I'm gonna do that to a child outside of me, why wouldn't I do it to my inner child too? Why wouldn't I be there for my inner child and let it feel whatever it feels without any fix, without any solution? I'm scared I'm gonna be broke. Instead of me building a business right away, like, I hear you and I love you. I'm scared I'm not enough. I hear you. And then it moves from being this thing that you're constantly avoiding to just kind of being okay. And it starts to be seen, and you start to realize you're now the seer of that trauma versus the trauma itself. One thing I hear a lot from people is, I'd love to expand, I'd love to live in my heart, but money. There's a very big, I gotta make money. I understand and I hear that. There is a level where you need money to survive, that I'm not denying that that's a part of life. You need to be able to get food and need to rent a place, whatever, that exists. But I can feel the difference between that truth, which isn't a personal thing, that's just true, oh, I gotta make money, and a deeper meaning under it. Like, I was working with someone once, and I could feel the panic and the fear. And the more I talked to him, the more I realized his dad said when he was a kid, anyone who doesn't make money is worthless. So he's not only scared of losing money, he's much more scared of losing his dad's love and being worthless. And that underlying thing is a lot of times attached to people's money story. So it's one thing that you're scared of not having money. That's one thing that could be true. But there's a lot of times, then I'll be shamed by my mom. Then I'll have to live like my parents did. Then I will have to face that I'm a failure. These little dark things are the stories that were in our bodies that we've been trying to avoid. And then we realize most of what I've been doing has been to avoid feeling worthless. So you're actually doing things out of the fear of feeling worthless. So companies are built out of, I don't want to be bullied again or feel worthless to my parents. And when you make something out of fear, it's not going to be sustainable, because eventually that fear is going to come to light. So the company you built out of that fear will have to collapse, right? So the ironic twist is, the more that you're scared of money because of the underlying pattern, the more that life has to take the money from you to get you to that pattern so that you can forgive it. And what I have people do then is, like, sit with the worthless pattern, sit with the fear of being worthless, and say something like, you're allowed to feel worthless in my body. See, when they were a kid, they weren't allowed to feel worthless. Now you're giving an unconditional love to a pattern that has been judged for having that pattern, and instead you're loving that pattern. Then the pattern can start to dissolve. If worthlessness is allowed in your body, then it's not going to have that pull on you anymore. Now, you're not running from worthlessness and creating a company out of it. You're fine with yourself. This I'm okay no matter what mentality creates a much bigger space for higher level ideas, higher levels of worthiness, because you've dissolved your fear of worthlessness. From that space, you create something out of love that you already realize you are the abundance, and that what you're creating is a byproduct of your inner abundance that you are. Because you don't need it to be happy, you are enough without it. And then you start to realize the number one thing that you are, the highest asset you have, is your vibration. That's a higher asset than money, right? And you start to realize your connection to yourself is worth more than money. I mean, realize this, every dollar you've ever made came from you. So instead of getting obsessed with money, get excited about you, because you're the source that the money came from. Your ability to connect with yourself created space for money to come to. But if you think money is bigger than you, you're going to be codependent on it. You're going to cut off your source that creates that and think that's the answer. So you're screaming energetically, I'm not complete, this thing's bigger than me. And if you could lose your attachment to money, the paradox is you will be able to receive much bigger money. But if you're screaming money's bigger than me, the universe will go, okay, I'm gonna make you lose both, because you're already losing yourself thinking this thing's bigger. You're saying it's the answer, not me. You already know how that works in relationships. If you've ever been on a date with someone who thinks you're the answer to their life and they need to be with you, you know how quickly you want to leave. Because you're like, oh, you're making me the answer. It's like a burden for me. Well, imagine if you're on a date with money and you're like, you're the answer to all my problems. Money's like, I'm going to get the hell out of here because I don't want to be the answer to your life. And think of all the things that we say to money. And if you were money on a date with you, and you heard the sentences that we say to money, like, you're never enough. You're the root of all evil. Money's the root of all evil. You don't grow on trees. Like, whatever the sentences are that you have for money, they're very judgmental. You're never enough. I can't ever get you to be more. Yeah, like every time you look at your receipt, how much is in your bank account, you're mad. Well, if you were money and you were on a date with you and you heard how you talk about money, wouldn't you leave? What if instead you start with, you're enough as you are? Even if you're in debt, you're enough as you are. I'm grateful for you as you are. And you start supporting all of these things, and you practice being a space of love that's grounded in yourself, that doesn't need money to be happy because your connection to yourself is bigger. Now you're able to receive bigger, and things want to come to you because your connection to yourself is bigger than the thing. I mean, think of what you want in another person. Don't you want someone who's connected to themselves, that actually doesn't need you and grab onto you and isn't addicted to you? So know that your fear of losing money often isn't actually your fear of losing money. It's your fear of exposing your deeper fear of failing, of being unloved by your dad, of, a traumatic moment where you experience something in your childhood that you don't want to experience it again. I don't want to be homeless again. I don't want to feel that again. So my life's job is to keep that from coming to the surface and do everything I can to avoid that. Meanwhile, that thing is still in there. We got to get that out and make it okay. So you can forgive that childhood experience, release it, connect to the now, and realize I don't need money to be happy, but I'm able to receive because I am all that is. And by the way, obviously, if your vibration's going up and other people are losing money, they're going to lose their attachment to their story, and you're going to be worth a lot of money because you're on a higher frequency that eventually is where we're all headed. Eventually, we're going to lose all of the things that aren't truly aligned with nature. You're going to lose your attachments. You're going to lose everything in your house that you think defines you. You're going to lose people at times. A lot of people are losing their friends. They're losing family members. They're losing so many different things to get you to see that you're enough without it. None of those things define you. There's a lot of people who have a belief that you have to suffer to evolve. And suffering can be a byproduct, but I wouldn't decide to aim for suffering. I would decide to evolve, right? If you, instead of going, okay, I'm going to suffer, I'm going to create sabotage so it can overcome it, that's the ego. The ego likes to create its own sabotage so it can overcome the sabotage that it created. I mean, every time you hang out with a friend that you don't want to hang out with, every time you say yes to a job you don't like, the way the ego works is it goes, I got to knock everything down and then pick it back up again. And the reason it wants to do that is it's scared to expand past itself. The ego's scared to expand past the truth of what it is. So instead of aiming for suffering and then fixing the suffering, which actually still keeps you the same egoic controller, surrender into the now. Now, there can be some pain when you do that because you're bringing light to the ego that's trying to stay alive. So it can show up by being needy, it can show up by being addicted, it can show up by being scared, it can show up by being lost or avoidant or codependent, it can do all these things. But the more you're expanded, the more you bring a light to those patterns. And the more you bring a light to those patterns, the more you can free it. The only thing darkness needs to heal is light. It just needs to be seen. If you listen to the fear and you go, I hear you, and you still keep moving forward in your expansion, it realizes that you're running the show now. You in the now is running the show. So it realizes it's now safe to dissolve into you. If it goes, we can't do this, and you go, you're right, and you freak out with it, you shrink yourself, and this 5-year-old version of you that's panicking, runs the show. So we're put in a position now where this is moving faster and faster, where it's very clear that we're either picking surrendering or picking holding on to the old story and the small story of ourselves. And if we keep holding on to the small story in this time, we're going to go down with it really quickly. If you scream for your limitations, if you scream for your smallness, if you scream for why it's not that easy, your darkness is coming to light so much that you're trying to avoid it, and it's getting so obvious, and you're trying to get smaller and smaller. You're going to go down with it. But if you instead see the world as like a giant operating table right now, you're in surgery, and your job is to just sit back and listen, life can pull this stuff out of you through forgiveness, through acceptance, through understanding these patterns come from moments of trauma. Oh, this is from when my mom drove off and it felt like abandonment to me. I'm there for that kid. I'm going to be present and become the parent to that kid. I'm here. That must have sucked when she left and you felt abandoned. I'm here for you right now. One of the things that's moving, we're moving from being our parents' kid to the now's kid. You're leaving the story of, I am my parents' child, I am all these patterns that I need to be to survive, to I am the now's child. I came from my parents, but I'm God's child. I'm the now's child. I'm this moment. There's nothing else that I could be. This whole thing is me. And when you're asleep and you're dreaming, there are a bunch of characters that exist in your dream. And there's a you that exists in your dream. There's a you that maybe is being chased by someone, or someone's running after you, or someone's yelling at you, or someone's hitting you, or whatever. And you, in that experience, can really trick yourself into thinking that you're actually running from something or going through an experience with someone else. But the more you do this work, the more you understand you created that. When you realize you were dreaming, oh, I created that guy. I created that all existed within me. The me inside the dream is a character I created. It's the illusion of separate me. But I'm the one that's dreaming this. I'm the one that's the entire room. I'm the whole space. Now, imagine if that isn't only the case when you're dreaming, but it's also the case now. Imagine if you're all of this. And the trauma is the illusion of separation, the illusion of the separate self. And so right now you can think about someone and feel triggered. Think of your parents right now and you could feel triggered, but they're not here. That's just a thought. You're having a thought about your dad and you're freaking out. You're freaking out not about your dad. You're freaking about your thought. This is your thought. You call dad. So these are just a collection of thoughts that exist inside you that are fighting it out. I know that there are people that actually exist outside of you at the same time, but what is triggering you is the false them inside of you, triggering the false you. So you realize that almost all of your fear is a lie. And we've been trained to kind of separate our thoughts and actually think we're the small self when all of these people exist within you. You don't have to do anything about the actual people outside of you. They're just living their own life, doing whatever they do. Your trigger is you have this diorama of all these different people sitting here, and you're the whole diorama. You're the whole room. And sometimes when I work with people, they ask, is this actually a mirror of my entire reality? Like if I cry out something, does that also release it in the world? Does the world mirror my inner work? The best answer I have is whenever you release something, realize whatever you're about to do from now on, this is the first moment of your entire life where that thing was released. And you've never seen reality ever without that fear lodged in your body. So the entire world, your entire perception of the world, no matter what, has included you with those fear-based patterns in your body. So you have to be open to the idea that what you perceive to be reality has been 100% including the lie that was buried in your body. So as you open up more, you start to see that reality gets a little different too. And I've noticed in my life so many bizarre, surreal synchronicities. And I don't know if it's just because you get more aware and you learn to look for it or whatever, but the amount of times that I have worked with a client, they let go of their attachment to someone and then that person calls them right after. I mean, I've seen that hundreds of times. The amount of times that I've let go of my need for something and then that thing shows up. I've had it where people are hanging out with me and we, go to the store and I'll think of someone, I'm like, that person will be at the store, and then they are. And the more you do this, the more you realize that there's a belief that there is a separation to the world with you. Well, where does that separation start? Where do you find the line to that separation? Is it just the body? No, because there's no way you're your body. Your body changes. I grew up and the cells are changing all the time, so I can't be my body. It's always changing. I'm not my body. Where is the line between the outside and the inside? Where is the line? You can't find it, but you do have an arbitrary trauma line existing where you go, that's over there and this is here. You have an idea of separation here. But we've just never seen what life is like as that line leaves. And the more I do this work, the more my goal or my job or my reason for being here at the ultimate level is to experience the oneness of what I am. That takes precedent over every decision I make. With everything, does this expand me towards a oneness experience, and will this help me to learn the truth of what I am? Or is this my fear kicking in, keeping me in the small, separate story of Kyle as a survival mechanism? And you start to realize everything's either moving towards oneness or false sense of survival. And as you move towards oneness, you just start to go, there's no limit to how much I can release and how much more can happen. And the more you move into the oneness, the less you're in a what do I do fear-based place, but the more receptive you are to magical stuff just happening for you. Stuff just happens. The old story is I have to make things happen. And there's an ego that has to do. And the more you do this, the more you are receptive on a frequency for bigger things to happen. And so you start to see experiences that say, the world is mirroring me. As I'm opening up to the now, the world is purging its old story too. Like, isn't it weird that at the same time as we're doing this documentary right now, at the exact same time as people are finding all this darkness in their body, all this darkness in the world is coming to light at the same time? It's not like everyone was purging all their darkness in the 80s while the world looked great. It's like we're all at the same time. The world is showing everything in the world that was a lie. Everything in the world that was not the laws of nature. Everything in the world that's like egoic. We're gonna see money not be the number one thing, both on the inside and on the outside. We're gonna see making a relationship work with someone might be, but also might not be the number one goal. Weirdly, on the inside and on the outside, relationships are falling apart all over the place at the exact same time. So everything that's going on the inside is happening on the outside at the same time. And I could see the way people perceive the world tells me where they are in their body. I've had people say, like, I think the world's falling apart. And I'm like, oh, congratulations, you're about to fall apart. People are like, oh, no, the world looks like, I see all these solutions. Oh, you're still in this optimistic place where there's a solution to some secret problem that you haven't looked at, right? And then there's people that just finally have their full fall apart and are just here. And the world just is what it is. And it's not that scary because it is what it is. And you start looking at it through God's eyes, through the universe's eyes. You start looking at it through the now's eyes. And you can also look at the stuff inside you through the now's eyes. You stop the judgment of the patterns inside. You stop escaping yourself because you're looking at it through this massively unconditional, forgiving voice that's just forgiveness, that's just bringing it to light and forgiveness. It's just burning up. You're just here experiencing yourself in this moment. And I created a company called Evolving Out Loud. And the reason it's called Evolving Out Loud is I believe as I give people advice, it's actually for me. Right? Have you ever given someone advice and then you learn from the advice you just gave them? Like they'll say, like, I have a stomach ache, and you'll be like, sometimes you give people advice they aren't even asking. They'll be like, I have a stomach ache. And you go, I think you should break up with her. And they're like, I'm single. And you're like, oh, this advice is for me. If you've ever given someone advice and you learned from that advice, doesn't that mean there's two of you? There's a you that gave the advice and a you that learned from it. So this is when I started getting more excited about that place that the advice was coming from and listening to it and following it. And so that's what I do. I listen to the now and then do what it says. One of the ways I like to look at this really surreal time is that life is taking away our ability to escape ourselves. And up until 2019, many of us had enough ability to escape ourselves, whether it was that you had a job that just got the job done of being a job, or you had a mediocre enough relationship, you didn't have to look at your soul. You could escape, you could travel, you could do different things. And now imagine that 2020, 2021 and beyond is like, I'm changing all those patterns and I'm gonna force you to stay home. It's like life is giving us a giant timeout. And so this time to me feels like I want you to meet yourself. I need you to stop needing to do this because that served a purpose in the past. But right now, I need you to listen. And you're still gonna speak, but I need you to speak what you're hearing on a level that's bigger than you're used to listening. So I see this time as the universe making all of our darkness come up. And once it comes up, it's seen. And once it's seen, it dissolves. And it's purging what no longer serves us. I was touring up until 2020. And I was about to tour with other big speakers and things were getting really, really big. And then when 2020 started, one of the things that happened for me was I ended up staying home a lot and doing all my stuff online. And this was the first time in my life that I got to both work and really be a much more present father, to be at home with my daughter. And she has these little dresses that she likes to wear for different Disney movies. She has a Moana dress and a Frozen dress. And there's little holes in the dress, and I just want to get it stitched up. This to me would usually be something that doesn't mean anything. In the past, I used to think how big the theater is or selling the books is what matters. And I can't stop crying thinking about something that usually seems so small, meaning so much. And I'm crying out the me that thought that a giant achievement is a bigger deal. And this is one of the many patterns that's leaving my body right now. In this time, our patterns are falling off of us. So this morning I was meditating and I had a moment of going, okay, I gotta do this and I gotta do this. And then I just thought about something that seems so small, just getting my daughter's little dress fixed. And I just started crying. It's like, the now goes, hey, I know you think your big mission is a big thing, and I know you think you're here to just get as many followers as possible, and I know you're here to get the book sold, but you can't move forward until you just go get her dress sewn up. And I want you to see that at the moment is more important than your big goal. And then I cried out the big goal, which I believe actually, ironically, creates a space that's even bigger where bigger goals can chase me. So the lockdowns and COVID and the pandemic and all this stuff caused me to change my patterns and be home more. I don't know what being home is. I lived on the road and it changed my patterns, and I get to stop working. Like right after this interview, I'm gonna call her or go over and see her or bring her over here or whatever, right? I get to be a dad much more and find a higher meaning than even me as a speaker. And then bring that me into my speaking and bring a higher world than any content I've ever delivered before 2020. So this is the end of our distractions. It's the end of our addictions. And you'll notice that your distractions, the way that they fall off is by getting louder, right? Your money issue is getting louder. Your addiction's really loud. You really want that drink. That's because it's falling off. Everything that's dying gets louder before it dies. Every bad guy in every movie, when they're finally caught, they're louder. Oh, seize him! Like, that's your ego. It's falling apart, right? Everything that's falling apart. A person drowning is going to get louder. Help, help. Your ego's loud right now because you can't deny it. It's so obvious. And it's exponentially going to get louder. And it's going to get so loud that you're going to have to break off and see it as our egoic constructs fall off and we're just here. And you start to be more connected to the now than connected to your addiction, connected to your need for that relationship to work that actually didn't work, right? Things that fell off actually didn't work, but you didn't have to face that. That job wasn't doing it for your soul. That relationship wasn't doing it for your soul. Now, if it's supposed to fall off, it doesn't have a choice. It's falling off. It's getting heavier. Everything that's not you is getting heavier so that it can go. I have to be doing what I'm here for, or I'm going to collapse. So this time is the freeing of that. And people are scared of what the world is looking like right now, but realize the world was like that before. We just didn't see it. It's just as bad as it was then, we just can see it now. And the stuff that's in your body is just as bad as it was in the past, we just can see it now. So you get to assess, do I want to keep this thing that's heavy in my life or not? Am I going to keep holding this lie about myself? Even if it's not just an external thing, an internal thing, am I going to keep moving forward with all this shame in my body? Am I going to keep moving forward with this need to constantly achieve and not be present? All of those things are being purged out. They're louder and louder, but they're leaving. All I needed to know was I'm loved no matter what. And that's such proof of we're here to learn to love everything. You're here to learn true love. Not just love the positive, not just love the things that seem like in society they're accepted as good, but to love your own darkness. Love your shame, love your mistakes, love your problems from your past, love your addictions. Like, can you accept the you that had that addiction? Can you accept the you that did something bad? Can you accept the energy that's not deserving? Check this out. You could also say out loud to it, you're allowed to feel not deserving in my body. Because what is that saying? I'm here with you even when you feel you don't deserve it. That's how much I love you. That even when you feel no one loves me, I'm going to love you even when you feel no one loves me. I'm here with you unconditionally to that pattern. And then that pattern isn't constantly trying to escape everything. That pattern isn't shaming itself. See, the pattern believes it has to do something right and then it gets love. I'm saying, how about love first and we do stuff from that place? Versus go, I gotta do and then love, because that implies doing is bigger than love, right? But instead we say love is first, whether you totally are a screw up in your mind, whether you're a total addict, we gotta start at forgiveness and see what's created through that, versus saying it's when you do something right, you get love. Then we're just doing stuff out of a fear of losing love. And that's why the world is what it is. Love hasn't been first. It's been do first. It's been achieve first. It's been avoid trauma first. It's been don't be worthless first. It's been all this bullshit first. So love hasn't been the underlying truth. And you see a world of chaos because of that. You see, okay, when I hit $1 million, I'm loved. Oh, it turns out that's not it. It's 10 million. Oh, I'm loved at 10 million. Then you get that. And the more they get, the more depressed they are. Oh, it's when I'm finally married. And then you get married and you look at married people and they're like, oh, maybe that's not it. Because I know a lot of married people. I don't know almost any married people that are really happy. Okay, so it turns out it's not in the partner. Okay, it turns out it's not in the job. It turns out it's not in any of this. Oh, what's happening right now is I have to find love first. I have to accept that I'm loved first. And that's the instant dissolving of the pattern that says it's when I do something that I'm loved. And you start to really realize that the only problem really was our awareness. Because the higher you go up, the more you're aware that those patterns aren't the truth. But before, you didn't have that awareness. So they really were the truth as far as you knew. And so one of the many patterns that's probably trying to come to light and leave is blame. We're all blaming everything right now, whether it's an issue about gender, whether it's an issue about a politician, whether we're all looking for something to hate. So we're blaming, and eventually that's going to run its course because we're going to be tired of doing that. Eventually it's just like, it's that thing, it's that group of people, it's that thing. And it's just everything passes. And eventually you're going to be tired of doing that and realize this isn't fulfilling me to blame this. This isn't doing anything for me. I'm just using that and declaring that everything I'm blaming has more power than me. So at one point, that's just going to fall off. And by the way, remember, something that's not you will get louder and louder and then leave. So blame is really loud right now, but that's because it's on its last legs. It's a frequency that no longer serves us, and it's louder and louder. And imagine it just getting louder and louder and louder, and you can just feel that the louder it gets, the quicker it'll be done. You can actually feel that. It's exhausting to just constantly look at what to blame. And so one of the reasons we like blaming something or hating on something is it helps us to prevent ourselves from feeling something inside that we're scared to feel. And even if it's something that actually is measured as dangerous or not good, there still is an us that goes, if I keep my focus there, then I don't have to look at something here. And this thing that's inside is trying to come up to the surface. And so if I took away your ability to blame anything, including yourself, what would come up in your body? Can you feel an energy? Like if I don't have that thing to escape to over here, then I would have to feel accountability. I would have to feel abandoned. If I can keep my focus on another person, then I don't have to look at what my inner child feels right now. And instead of being like, that congressperson's awful, be with the, what's it bringing up for me right now? It's what it brings up for you that needs to come to the light too. And if I take your ability to blame away, you'll have a scared little child that you can become present for. You'll start to feel in your body, like I could ask people at home watching this right now. If I take your ability to blame anything or look into the future for any escape route, and you're just sitting here and I say to you, what are you feeling? And I take away even your reasons for feeling it. Like you don't even get to say why you feel it. And I just go, what do you feel? And you just sit with, I feel scared. I feel lost. I feel confused. I feel abandoned. And then I say to you, okay, I want you to sit with that. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. Let it feel abandoned. Then that feeling can come to light. If that feeling comes to light, it starts to dissolve because you see it. And then you'll notice that if it leaves, your ability to escape it leaves too. Your need to blame also goes away too, right? It was used to cover up what was inside. And if I take what was inside and bring it to the light, your escape route also leaves too. So addictions are a great way to not have to face your inner child, right? If I keep drinking, then I don't have to look at this scared part. If I keep dating everybody, then I don't have to be with the feeling of aloneness. But if I take your ability away to do that, and you're just finally here with aloneness, it'll start to be cried out, and you'll start to feel connected to the now and no longer feeling alone. When you feel that, you then lose your need for the addiction, because the addiction was helping cover up this thing that was inside. So blame, alcohol, all these different things are just avoidant tactics of looking at what's inside. And if you're just finally okay with, I feel lost, and don't do anything about it. Because we grew up thinking we have to achieve to avoid that. We just I'm not gonna be alone anymore. I'm gonna find the right partner and get married. You're doing that to avoid feeling alone. So now you got this trauma that's still hidden. But if you could finally be here with being alone, you're allowed to be here alone. I'm fine with feeling loneliness. It can be cried out. And then you realize aloneness was your judgment of the moment. It has nothing to do with if someone's there. You can feel alone and be with a group of people. So loneliness has nothing to do with someone's there. You can also feel totally connected and by yourself. And if you could just finally go, I'm here to be okay with aloneness, it won't be there forever. So we've just become these people that have avoided this thing, and this stuff is now coming to light. The only thing that creates darkness is the fact that it's hidden. And you can spend your whole life with that dark thing never coming to light and feel in your head to avoid that. Or we can just sit here and get present and let this thing come to light.